I'd like to refer to the so-called rules of thumb. Rules of thumb are based on a normal distribution's features, and they can be used to roughly describe a data set and can be used to interpret a standard deviation. Let me show you first those three rules and what is their basis. I start by computing the first rule of thumb using the mean, and that first rule says there's a range between the mean minus one standard deviation and the mean plus one standard deviation. And that range, given the properties of the normal distribution, should cover about 2/3 of the data. That's exactly true if we have a normal distribution in front of us. And now let's see where that comes from. So we need that value, and we need the mean, and we need the standard deviation, cumulative, and we see that below the value which is given by the mean minus one standard deviation is about 16%. Observing a value below the mean has a 50% probability, and observing values below the mean plus one standard deviation has a probability of about 84%. We now calculate the difference between those two. We'll see this covers about 68%. And this leads to this first rule, which states there's about 2/3 chance of finding values in the range mean minus one standard deviation, mean plus one standard deviation. And if we take that one step further and do the same for the second rule of thumb, which says take the mean and subtract two standard deviations, and take the mean and add two standard deviations, and again compute the probabilities based on a normal distribution, we see there's a probability of about 2.2 something to observe prices below 32 something, but that lower bound is characterized by the mean minus two standard deviations. And there is a probability of about 97.7 to observe prices below 319, which is given by the mean plus two standard deviations. And now we compute the difference between those two values. We get a probability of about 95%, which is the basis for the second rule of thumb, which says there's about 95% chance of finding values in the range of the mean minus two standard deviations and plus two standard deviations. And finally, the third rule of thumb refers to three standard deviations below the mean and plus three standard deviations above the mean. And again, computing the probabilities here, we see there's almost nothing below three standard deviations, and there's almost nothing above three standard deviations. And that leads to the third rule, which says there's almost everything in the range plus minus three standard deviations. Again, these three rules are based on assuming a normal distribution, actually on the features of a normal distribution. And this is approximately 2/3. This is approximately 95%. And this is approximately everything.